Hello, hello, hello. I am Colt of Colt and Ang, and this is Part of Love, the channel devoted to helping you find the love you deserve. If you're a first-time viewer or for whatever reason aren't already a part of the crew, we'd love you to consider subscribing to the channel so you never miss another Part of Love. And feel free to leave a comment below because we really dig talking to y'all about what we're doing here, and we're always looking for new ways to connect with you and help you find the love you deserve. Plus, if you have ideas for things that you want to see on the channel, throw it down in the comments and we'll see if we can get it in the lineup. So today we are going to scratch the very tip of the surface of the iceberg that is mental health awareness. May was Mental Health Month. October 10th is World Mental Health Day, and right here, smack dab in the middle, is the Refinery. Let's talk about it. I wanted to put this out there. Almost a prompt for what we're talking about today, which is mental health, what the issues are with mental health, why we need to destigmatize all the different aspects of it. And what I think comes to mind first is, what is mental health to you? Like what comes to mind when you think of that? Because I think that's the most important starting point for this conversation. Because if we're not on the same page in general, I think obviously then it kind of, goes down the tubes. And I'm going to take the lead on this, which is a rarity, but I'm going to do it because I want to start us with the definition of mental health, which is, you know what, actually, I'm going to go back in. I want John, you go first.
Okay.
Give me what you feel like mental health is. What that means to you, what kind of pops into your brain when you first think about it. And then after we all talk about it, I'm going to give the definition of it because I think it's really, really interesting how it's defined.
Amazing. I would define mental health as the awareness of how we're doing internally. Where do our thoughts lead, especially when something doesn't go according to plan or according how we would like it to go? Where does our thoughts go? Do we immediately go into self-beat up? Do we go into doubt? Do we go into a negative mindset? Or is it something that we think of, okay, what's the silver lining in this situation? Or what can I take out of this? What's I think one of you said the wisdom out of this rather than the lesson out of this. And it's that checking in with oneself to see how they're feeling. How are they really in this moment, what they're experiencing? What is that actually, how connected are they to that?
I dig that. And I would love to have taken credit for it, but it was actually Matt Pates who said wisdom versus lessons. So God, I've said it since then, but I wasn't the one who said it originally. All right, Brandon, what is mental health to you other than a nice tea and a nice tea?
Mental health for me, I think it's the state in which your mind currently is in. I think wherever your mind is at currently in life, I think that is a state of your mental health. And so, for instance, it's the same thing with your body, right? If you're a little bloated one day before you go to the gym, or you put on 2 pounds, you put on 3 pounds, you kind of base it off of that particular thing, and when you address it, as opposed to saying, well, right now I'm just this, right now I'm just that. You base it off of where you're at in that moment, in that day. And I think, to me, that's how we define mental health, is where you're at in your day-to-day, in your mind and in your thoughts.
I dig that. I think that brings up an interesting point about how people tend to look at mental health similarly to how we all tend to look at, I guess I should do this over here, how we all tend to look at our bodies,
Yeah.
Like you said, once you get in tune with your body, it's a lot easier for you to be like, okay, well, I ate this last night, so I'm a little bit bloated. I drank all of this. I didn't sleep. I know this is how this affects me.
Yeah.
But until we take that time to know our mental health and our mental situation and our emotional selves, we don't have a reference point. So we think you know, oh, I'm just a sad person. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm built this way. You know, and
Yep.
it's the same
Yep.
as the body. Oh, well,
Yep.
I'm just skinny by nature. I'm just fat by nature. I'm just always going to be out of shape. And it's these things that, you know, they take work physically and they take work mentally. And so I'm really excited to share this. This is literally on mentalhealth.gov. This is the description of what mental health is. The definition of mental health. You ready? Mental health includes our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It affects how we think, feel, and act. It also helps determine how we handle stress, relate to others, and make choices. Mental health is important at every stage of life, from childhood and adolescence through adulthood. So just to characterize it, mental health is literally life. It's literally every interaction that you have and how you deal with it. And I think that for me is why I was so excited to get into this talk today, because it's so insanely important for us to destigmatize everything that surrounds mental health and what that is characterized as. And that's my problem with the idea of mental health, is that it always gets associated in my mind with crazy. The minute you say, you know, you got to take care of your mental health, it's, well, what's wrong with you? I'm alive. That's why we need to take care of it.
Yeah.
I think Francis Mallmann talks about it so perfectly. He's if you watch Chef's Table, he's this incredible, I mean, if you are a foodie, then you just got mad at me for saying if you watch Chef's Table. But he's this amazing chef that I learned about through Chef's Table. But what I really respect about him is not just his food, but he's an Argentinian chef that specializes in Argentinian cuisine. And he talks about therapy in a totally different way than we do as Americans, just by trade. His whole family, kids included, young kids, all go to therapy. Always. And he's like, because they need someone to talk to that is not going to judge them in any way.
Right. And it's not in the situation with them.
Exactly. Has nothing to do with the situation. And
the unbiased of it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really, really, really dig that.
It's a great starting point there, Colt. Look at you, buddy.
I do what I can for us. I don't always have the right words, but I'm trying. Okay, so I got a good first question for us. Therapy is the first thing that comes to mind for all of us with mental health. It's just part of it, right? It's what's built into our society and therefore into our brains. But for you, what other than therapy do you do to take care of your mental health? Jon?
I mean,
no, Brandon. No, Brandon spoke. Brandon spoke.
Going.
I got it on the small screen, so I couldn't see.
Yeah. Well, here's what's interesting about what ended up happening for me this week. I had a morning where I woke up super heavy, and I couldn't figure out what was going on with me. And so I said, okay, well, what am I going to do to shift my mental space? What am I going to do to change my health? And so a very handsome man on this call has a 6-minute ab workout. I did
Jon,
a meditation.
I didn't know that ab workout.
Huh? Jon? Yeah, Jon's got an ab workout. It's on YouTube. Check it out. Gorski abs. But anyway, so I woke up and I thought to myself, what can I do to switch up my mentality for the day, right? And so I put on this 5-minute meditation. I sat outside on my yoga mat. I tuned out everything else. I put my phone on silent. And I did this meditation. And when I tell you it set the entire tone for my day, I really didn't believe, because I'd never really done a meditation before. I've done like guided ones in men's groups, but I really was kind of tapped out in somewhere else. But there was something so therapeutic about the experience, to where I could let go of my worries. I could let go of whatever anxiety I was holding in my body. And it's actually something you do with yourself in the moment. There's like you and your higher self. And so I did that. I came in, I did the 6-minute ab workout. And I found in that whole experience, right, it wasn't really about the physicality of it, but it was more so about breathing through moments for me. And breathing through the moments allowed me to get my head clear, allowed me to get my heart clear. And I did 2 podcast interviews right after that. And in those interviews, I found myself firing on a different level. I wasn't pulling from these archives of like conversations I've had previously. I wasn't pulling from something we've talked about last week. It was all fresh, new information, new metaphors. And it didn't feel like I was empty the next call I had and was like regurgitating. It was all new and all fresh. And I continued up through the whole day. So that was something I recently implemented in to help with my mental health and where I'm at in life.
Love that. Jon?
So obviously therapy is a huge thing. What has also helped, especially like how Brandon was saying, like in the morning, you can check in and see if something feels off or anything. I started like a morning routine, and that helps shape the day. And there's
We were talking about that last week, wanting to get back into that.
Yeah. And it's been, there's a lot of them that I've already picked up. I was doing a lot of them for a while, and now I'm really like getting the last pieces of this morning routine, but like taking a cold shower in the morning, waking myself up, and it's that mental battle with the cold and the fear of cold has been an amazing practice. But on top of that, as I'm doing like putting face moisturizer and body lotion and everything on, looking in the mirror and having at least a minute of self-confidence, talking to myself, of just like reminding myself, especially when I'm at my low, of like, yo, don't forget how much you've accomplished. Don't forget how much you've put into this. And it's like, every day is not perfect, but the fact that you keep waking up and you keep trying, that conversation with myself, I think, has been a huge part. There's 5 other questions I ask myself every morning.
Okay, we got you.
That I ask every morning, and there's a couple of them, which is, am I taking action every day? And even just asking myself, am I taking action? I can check in if something's not feeling right, if I have been doing the things I say I'm going to be doing. And the other one, am I feeling or giving love? And I think that's one that has opened my eyes into checking in. Do I feel like I'm getting love from my close friends, family, and stuff like that? And if I'm not, what is missing? What's in the gap? But also, am I also giving it out to others? Because there's been times where I feel like I'm getting love from other people, but then I realize I'm not actually sharing that with other people as well. And that's been where I get to check in myself. And why am I being too focused on myself? Where's my intention going, that I'm not also feeling like I'm sharing the love with others? So that morning routine has been a huge component of like checking in with myself and making sure I'm starting my days right.
Love that. Do you have those questions memorized, or is it something that you look up? Because I want to hear the rest of the questions, and no matter what, I want us to have them pinned down in the description box below. So do you mind sending them to me after this?
Yeah, I do. Actually, it's funny. I went on Word and I just created, like, I wrote a list of all my tasks in the morning, like part of the morning routine, and then Monday through Sunday, I just check them off. And then now I'm at a place where I try to see if I can check off as many of them before I even look at the sheet.
Before you look, yeah.
Memorizing and stuff like that. And like, even waking up in the morning before I even get out of bed, I did this last year. I texted a whole bunch of male friends and I was just like, what do you do in the first 5 minutes that you wake up? And it was a wide range of answers. But one of my favorite ones my buddy said is, before I even get out of bed, is I sit there and I sing gratitude for at least a minute and just think of everything I can be grateful for. And like, even just that has been a practice. I don't even think about doing it. I wake up and I immediately start thinking, I'm like, oh man, I'm grateful for the sleep. I'm grateful that I don't have anything this morning that I need to rush to. I have, like, just going through that has always, it's a good frame of mind to just, number one thing that I do every morning.
I love that.
But yeah, I'll send those questions to you.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So we'll have those down below. Dude, that's brilliant. I love that. I think all 3 of us tend to, and maybe this is, I don't know if this is a male thing or it's just a, us thing, or if it's just a human thing. I feel like most of the things that we talk about tend to end up being human things that get kind of this relegated to this description of being male things. And then as men in society, we tend to hold on to that's our thing now. That's what we do. And that's what we're trying to get rid of. But I get this question a lot, which is, what motivates you to work out? And for me personally, like if I was alone in the world, like if I was totally alone, that like I am legend kind of status, like just nothing else, I would work out every day. I would run a little further. I would run a little faster. I would work out harder. I would do whatever that is, because for me, that is my release. That is my mental health, because David Goggins has this thing where he talks about, he's this ultra marathoner and Navy SEAL and crazy person. And he says, you know, there's no way to be angry about something after you've run for like 3 hours. Like you just don't have it in you to be pissed anymore about bullshit. Like if it matters, it's something that really matters. And I think I've unintentionally always kind of adopted that mindset of I will break my body down, because in the middle of that, you know, second hour, you realize like, this is what's actually bothering me. This is all the stuff that I can do to fix it. This is how I'm going to, you know, so that's my way of dealing with it. But one thing that I've found through all of this COVID stuff is that like I've spent time talking to people. And I don't do that a lot. I don't check, like I come from a family who doesn't really check in with each other. Like we'll talk to each other when we do. It can go months without talking. We can suddenly, you know, and you pick up and that's fine. But I've found that I kind of have this standing date, Ange and I, with our maid of honor and her beau, and like we just sit there on FaceTime and have drinks, and like we have these conversations, and they've been so helpful at times when I don't think that I need them. And I think that's so important. I ended up leaving you spotlighted for that whole thing, Jon, because I was talking to you. So responses have been great.
Yeah. Okay. I was like, is it just me?
Nope. It was me.
Jon was staring at himself.
Jon was just looking at himself and I was talking. The important thing was he did a great job. His responses were so spot on. Yeah. I mean, there's no reason to go over that again, but I'm finding that it's a mixture of taking care of, like, this is all one thing, trying to separate it into multiple things and being like, that's my thing. Like the body is my thing, so I don't need to worry about my mind, or my mind is my thing, so I don't need to worry about my body. Like, no,
Yeah.
we take care of this and break this down and we work on this and this gets better. And you break this down and then you're more aware of everything else. Like it's all just that for me. That's what I do to better my mental health. So, all right, Brandon, I'm going to bring it back to you for question 2. Now, this is a personal one, but that's what we're doing here. Question 2 for everybody. Do you go to therapy? Why or why not?
No, I don't go to therapy. I think the biggest thing for me with not going to therapy has been because I have so many amazing people in my life that I've become accustomed to talking about whatever is going on in my life, with guys like Colt, with guys like Jon. I got a deep roster of men that I go to, and I have maybe 2 or 3 women that I call when it comes to my life and things that I have going on with me. And so I feel like often after those conversations, I do self-reflection and I come back with the same solution. And I'm not knocking a therapist, but I come to the solution that a therapist would have led me to anyway, simply because every therapist I've talked to says our one job is to listen and help you pretty much discover the answer for yourself. Our job isn't to give you some like pulled out of the sky, random, never heard before answer. Everything that we will hear from a therapist or a mentor or anything in life, we've heard before. And I think for me, when I hear from a therapist, you've done the work, or you don't need therapy because of how I kind of already take care of myself, my emotional, my mental space, then I know that my therapy isn't going into an office, right? My therapy is communication. My therapy is in the vulnerability that I share with people, my struggles, my real, like my deep shit, right? And then also implementing a lot of self-care things from meditation, from, you know, making sure that I'm reading a book that helps me to understand me a little bit better. And so in those situations and circumstances, when the opportunity presents itself, when Colt or Jon is prying with some really deep ass question, there's no holdback on my response or my answer. But I advocate for it because I know everyone doesn't have that skill and everyone's not that comfortable with communicating or talking about their feelings or what they've gone through or what they're going through in life.
Nice. All right, Jon.
Nice.
Yeah.
How about that? I actually do go to therapy. And it's funny because I didn't go to therapy for a very long time because I think it's a stigma that is in America a lot, that if you go to therapy, there must be something wrong with you. And at the time I was going through hard times, and that's what originally opened me to going to therapy. But I love my therapist. I've had it for 4 years, and I've built a good friendship with her where she knows me. And my favorite thing, she was just like this Irish lady who swears, and like, she's not the typical what you think therapist. But what's amazing about her, she calls me on my bullshit. Yeah. It's like, I can tell a story and be like, oh yeah, so this person did this to me, and like, I just didn't like, and she'll stop me and she'll, hold on a second. You're giving me your version where you it's in your favor. She's like, tell me what really happened in that moment right there. And I'm like, all right, well, what they said, it was this, and this. And she's like, so see what you're doing? You're switching in your mind so that they now did something to you. Where in reality, how you just said it right there, you're just taking it personally. And so that, even like how she's been able to call me out for years. But on top of that,
are you being attacked by a flock of crows?
There's like 50 birds just flew by, and I was
just
like,
want to make sure you were okay.
No, but it's been an amazing thing because, I mean, there's been some of my best sessions have been the ones where I'm like walking into the building. I'm like, I don't even know if I need to come in today. I have nothing coming to mind to talk about. And we'll dive into something deep where she's just like, let's talk about relationships. Where are you at with that? I'm like, oh, things are good. Like, I'm talking to this person, like, this is going well. And she's like, okay, well, what's interesting? Like, she's all about questions. And that's why I realized a good therapist doesn't give answers. She asks the right questions, because it's like the whole idea, we all have the answers inside of us. We just don't realize it. And she's asked, there's been so many times where she's asked the right question, and me vocalizing something that I've been thinking has either shifted something that, or like shifted my mentality, or I've been able to be like, oh man, this whole time I thought something's been lacking. I just, now that I'm vocalizing, it's because I've been choosing to not see that, or I've been choosing not to see something. So I personally think I've gotten probably like 15 friends just in the last year into therapy, just because I've told them, and then so many of them have loved it ever since. And like, I've just been able to tell them, having someone, kind of like what you guys were saying earlier, having someone who doesn't know anyone in my life, doesn't know anything personally, so there's no bias to when I tell her about a situation I'm dealing with, or friends or relationships or family. She just comes from this kind of neutral spot, and it's all just questions. And granted, she has 4 degrees in psychology and all that, so she knows she can go deep and pay attention to certain words I use. She's like, why'd you choose that word? And I'm like, I don't know. And then we'll dive in. That'll be the rest of the session, is diving into why I chose that word. Whereas like with certain friends, I don't know. It's just like, therapist has been a huge shift in my life of just having that person to reflect on. Or if I show up in a certain way, going up to her and being like, hey, why am I showing up in this way? Like, where's that coming from? What would cause me to come that? And she can break it down from psychology, psychological reasons, being like, well, what happened when you were a kid on this? And I'm like, oh shit, I didn't realize when I was a kid, yeah, this and this happened. She's like, yeah, so now you've taken that into your adulthood, and you should look at that. I'm like, all right. And I'll spend the next week or whatnot looking at it.
I dig that. That's I think that's kind of like, it's interesting, because that's what I feel like Matt was doing last week a lot, was just a lot of what, when we were on our separate, secondary call, he was talking a lot about from that degree standpoint. Like, I felt like a lot of what he was talking about was, well, this is literally what it is. And I think there's a great middle ground, which is why I go to therapy sometimes. So I didn't mean to go third and and answer that way. But yeah, I go sometimes. I go when it is most necessary for me. I am very fortunate that I have Angelina, obviously, and that we literally, this is what we do. And Brandon, that's where I'm kind of on the same side as you of well, why would I all the time? Like, it's not a necessary thing for me all the time. That said, there are times, like, I have Angelina, my best friend in the world, my wife, and talk to her every night. On the other side of that, I have two very, very close friends that know me, one from when I was a kid and one from my adulthood. And I can talk to them about a lot of things. But what I find is that with certain things, my friends and Angelina become unintentionally wildly biased for me. And I mean, we had a talk the other night that unintentionally led to a place of talking about some stuff from my childhood, and she got so angry. And I literally had to be like, hey, whoa, no, you can't be more mad about this than me, and I don't want to be that mad right now. So I'm sorry I brought it up. And suddenly I was apologizing for talking, you know what I mean? And that's to the most emotionally intelligent person I've ever met. On the other side, you know, those other friends, I don't talk to them about that. And I never have, because specifically, I know with one of those friends that they don't have a frame of reference for that. So they wouldn't be able to offer anything. I feel like it would weigh them down more than it would be able to, you know, help me. And I don't want to do that as a good friend. So there are times when I find that I'm in a pattern of, you know, I guess where my mental health is not where I want it to be. And that's when I will call up my therapist and be like, and dude, it took a while to find a good therapist. I'm not going to lie. Like, fuck, there are some shit bag, like, just how can you be that stupid and still be a therapist? Like, and the truth is, it's like anything else. That person may be perfect for somebody else, but my God, I clearly had a bad experience. I was just like, what the fuck? And that happened 4 or 5 times in a row.
Wow.
And I also had that experience that, Brandon, I feel like you kind of had, where my first experience with a therapist, during years when I was being abused, I was emotionally aware enough to lie. And that therapist was like, you know what? I don't think anything is wrong. I think you're doing a great job, you know, of dealing with, because I just lied that thing wasn't happening. And that the reason that I drew those pictures in school was because I saw it in a comic book. Talked my way out of it as a 13-year-old. Like, so that put a damper on therapy as a concept for me for a long time. But the reality is, I was going through something. I was going through pain, and I tried to hide that. And that doesn't mean that therapy sucks. It means that therapist sucked. It does. So I definitely go to therapy when it is most necessary. And sometimes I can't see that. And I'm very lucky that I have Ange to be like, hey, maybe call Lair. Like, maybe just try it out. See what's up. I'm putting you back in the spotlight.
Sweet.
So I had a question about therapy, but we kind of ended up covering it because that's what we always do with these fucking
always do. Yeah.
Do you guys have anything before I go any further that you want to, you know, Jon, this was your, you know, topic that you had brought up. So was there something specific that you wanted to talk about, or Brandon, that has been kind of on your mind that you want to make sure that we talk about today? Because we're only halfway through. So, so somebody drop something on me.
I can chop. add in some extra. I think one of the reasons I brought the topic up is because I had talked to a friend, actually coincidentally, another guy last week, and he had immediately when I brought up, I'm like, "Good dude, I know you're going through a lot. I know there's a lot coming up, and it's like I can obviously give you some advice and to an extent, but it does sound like it's something deeper, and like you should go to someone who professionally can talk to you and ask you the right questions, because you shouldn't have someone who doesn't know." Like I for example, I had a coach one time that he had me do this exercise, and we were sitting in a Joe and a Juice in the back and like a table, and there are people and everything. And he's like, "We're going to try this exercise. Sit down and close your eyes." So I closed my eyes and he's like, "Think about something." Like he walked me through his experience. And he's like, when you were a kid, and like about a friend who hurt you. And like this one incident came up and he's like, "Now think about," and he kept asking questions, and something I hadn't thought about easily in like 20 years. He brought that back to the forefront and was asking questions and going into the emotions. And I stopped and I opened my eyes and I was like, "Hey, really quick, have you done any research or study or any training in emotional therapy or anything like that?" And he was like, "No, why?" And I'm like, "Because you're tapping into something that like, I know I'm okay and I know I'll be okay with what you're bringing up, but to the wrong person, this could be psychologically like traumatizing. You're bringing trauma.
Wow.
You're asking people to bring trauma back up. And we're in a coffee shop. So what happens if I have a breakdown right now?" And he's just like, "Oh, I didn't think about that." I'm like, yeah. So I think tread lightly when you're asking those questions. And so going back to last week, when I was telling my buddy, I was like, "Dude, there's some stuff you're bringing up. And like, as much as like, I can ask you certain questions, like, this sounds like just some trauma that you need to go and like heal from and deal with. And I don't feel comfortable asking these questions, because if I tap into something that I don't know how to like help you with, then you're going to I'm basically going to ask you, let's put your trauma in your hand.
You can
uncover your hand.
You guide them.
I don't know what to do with it, so I need you to deal with it, and then I'm going to walk away. And then you leave the person now holding their trauma back in your hand again. And so I was telling him, I was like, "Dude, why don't you look at getting a therapist?" And he was just like, he's like, "Nah, dude." He's like, "People go to therapy, have something wrong with them." I started laughing. I'm like, it's a stigma that has been told on it. But I'm like, no offense, dude. Like, it's okay to admit that there's something wrong. Like, there is something wrong. Look at you're telling me all these places that you don't know why you keep making these mistakes, when deep down you do already know the answer because you're telling me. But now this is something from your childhood that you need to deal with. So it's okay to admit that we're not perfect. We're not okay all the time. It's like that saying, it's okay not to be okay. And so the reason I was bringing this up, because how often do guys actually talk to their guy friends and be like, "Yo, I think I need someone who professionally can ask me the right questions and put me in that safe space." Because I think with friends, we're able to help each other get there. But it is one of the things when it comes up to trauma, it is that like with certain people we are, and I feel like both of you are able to have that conversation and share. And I do feel to an extent I can do that. But I think having even just this topic, I'm hoping men who see this, it gives them the permission to like be like, "Hey, maybe I should try therapy." Because a couple of guy friends who told me in the beginning they would never do therapy now are doing therapy. And I had one of my buddies call me like 2 months ago after I didn't even know he was going to it. I like told him about it. I just gave him the phone number of who to recommend him to someone. And he hit me up and was like, "Dude, just had such a great session today. I think I'm gonna have this therapist in my life for the rest of my life." And I started laughing. I'm like, "All right, dude, whatever feels good." But it's like, I'm glad that he put in the work to ask themselves. Because I think the one good thing with having a therapist that you go on a weekly thing or a bi-weekly or whatever it is, a session, is you have something that's consistently, okay, now let's sit down and let's continue talking about this topic. Which sometimes, like I've noticed with other places when I go, it's not consistent and going deeper unless it's in that one sitting. Whereas having that weekly session, like even yesterday, right before I was finishing, actually, Brandon, Bruna put up a post yesterday, which was something in a sense of if a male is really close, does not have his father in the picture and ends up being very close with his mother, he ends up having a difficult time committing to women. And I was like, "Oh, that's an interesting topic." But it left it very kind of vague. And so I messaged her and said, "So let's say a guy is close to his mom because his dad wasn't in the picture," which I feel like is kind of would be the obvious thing. How can he address that commitment issue? And she messaged the person who came up with this quote and came back with this great info. But I ended up telling my therapist, I'm like, "Hey, this person quoted this quote, and it really stuck to me. And I'd love next session to talk about that, because I'm wondering if I don't think I have commitment issues, but in the way that it was phrased, I would love to like dive in and let's see if I actually have any issues with commitment or anything like that." So I think just being open to these topics and just even sharing that we go to therapy, or however it looks like we go to deal with our therapy. I'm hoping it gives more guys permission to tap into what their mental health looks like.
You know what's interesting about what you're saying in general with men giving themselves permission is even if they don't give themselves permission to go to therapy, I think we also want to address giving men permission to just feel and acknowledge what it is that they're feeling, right? This whole giving yourself permission thing is such a broad and abundant conversation, because I've had to give myself permission to feel angry recently, right? Like I shamed and I shunned anger. And then I remember someone was like, feel all the waves of your emotion and what you're feeling and what you're going through. And I gave myself permission to feel anger. And in that, I took the power away from the anger. And so it was still present, and I felt it, and I acknowledged it, but it took it away from leading me into like habits or like vices or void fillers, whatever they might have been, all because I gave myself permission to feel. Now, I think that's a starting point or a basis for a lot of the men who are listening to this and they may be new to the idea of therapy. I mean, the conversation is broad, but I also don't want to assume someone's been introduced to it, because we're in this space where we hear about mental health on a consistent basis. We do the work, we study, we talk to people who talk about this stuff, but someone still it may be foreign to someone, right? So if this idea of therapy is foreign to them, I want to address the idea of vulnerability and transparency that would give them enough courage to say, hey, you know what, I think because of everything I have going on in me, to acknowledge that first, then they could say, you know what, I need to see professional help when it comes to this.
I dig that. I very much. I mean, I know I keep saying that about everything y'all are saying, but I just fucking do. You guys are great. So I wrote down a couple of things. One, what Jon was talking about, and this goes to the larger issue of what we are all kind of saying, which is destigmatizing therapy, but maybe even we are looking at it wrong. The whole point of being here is refining our skills, not just showing the world how fucking awesome we are. So, like, you know, therapy, what I've gotten from this is that therapy is not just with a therapist. Like, therapy is something that you do to take care of yourself. It is something you do. It's sharing. A therapist practices therapy, but they are not therapy. That is not what that is. So for me, I think that goes to why I go to a therapist occasionally, but I am constantly in therapy. My life, literally this channel, my conversations with you guys, the Refinery, my entire life is therapy. That's the point, which goes back to the definition of it. You know, it's constantly looking at how did I react to that? Why did I react that way? I had a situation yesterday. I had an audition for something, and I had a few last week, and it was so easy. Like, they went very well. The feedback was great. And I was like, oh, cool. I got a path now. I got like a process. I'm fucking killing this. Gonna be smooth. Got another one. And it was for a very big project. And I was like, oh, fuck. Now I've got to really work on this. And I worked the same way I'd worked on the other one. And I worked so hard and I could not get it together. Like, I could not fucking get it together. And I went down a spiral of like shame and worry about what's happening. Why am I not able to do this? And at the end of the day, it just had an off day. And I literally now have looked at it and was like, oh, I just didn't memorize it first. Like, that was the difference. So then I like panicked, and then I kept being like, no, I'll memorize it eventually if I just keep doing it. And it was all these things that got in the way, but it was such a small little thing, right? Like this one step that I had skipped, but that was a form of therapy. And I just think that the way that we're talking about it makes it so interesting, Jon, as you're talking about, you know, you're a therapist, you're sharing it with all these guys who just think, oh, I don't want to do this. Meanwhile, all they want to do is do that with you, because you are known as an emotionally intelligent person. Brandon, I can only imagine how many of your friends treat you like a therapist.
Oh my God.
But don't want to go to therapy because they don't need to see a therapist.
Right.
But they'll talk to you about it 24/7. And I think the more we destigmatize the concept of therapy and take it away from just a therapist's office, I think that is going to be super helpful. Lastly, you said something really beautiful, and I've said it before, but in the concept of life, I used to talk to Ange about this. I think that we have a kind of a color palette, right? Like an artist palette, and we have all these broad range of colors. But at a certain point, when we've gotten enough like praise for painting with blue and white and orange, we're like, that's my colors. That's the only ones I ever want to feel. That's happiness. That's joy. That's good. Like, that's what I want to do. But this is what we've got. We've got a whole palette here, and there's a reason we have them all. And we're supposed to feel all of those feelings. But you also said this to a degree. You need to feel your feelings and not be controlled by those feelings. That is something that's so special. And I think that is what therapy leads you to. It gives you more awareness of your color palette so that when that, angry color pops out, you go, oh, okay, I've got to paint with this for a second. I'm going to paint with it so I don't just like smash it on the board, just break everything down. And I really love that you kind of tapped on that, and that I think that's so necessary. Feeling your feelings and not having your feelings like control you.
It's been the most liberating experience for me, right? Like, because when you're pent up or you feel yourself holding back, right? Like, when I think about times I've been angry and someone's told me not to be angry, or I try to stop myself from being angry, the ways it seeps out of me are so unhealthy and so destructive. It's better if I were just to go like scream in the fucking woods for 20 minutes, right?
Got it.
That short spurt of that like moment of just complete rage, complete everything coming out, that is more, it gets it out of my system more than if I were to be like holding it in, and now it comes out in a small thing at the grocery store, like, what the fuck do you want? And they're like, wait, dude, whoa, calm down, relax. Or like someone's passing me in the kitchen and they can feel literally my energy of like tense, like, don't you fucking walk by me, don't you fucking talk to me. People can feel that, right? So instead of holding it in and trying to repress it and keeping it to myself, I found it was way healthier for me to find outlets that weren't destructive to anyone or myself. If it's anger, same thing with sadness, same thing with joy or happiness, right? Like being overly excited in a moment, you could, and someone's not in that space, you could unintentionally put them into a deeper space of depression and sadness. Now, I'm not saying you have to change who you are or whatever the case may be, but because if you aren't aware of, I'm in a really good space, but this person may not be in a space to receive my joy, my celebration, my happiness, it's better not to go like, oh my God, guess what happened? This happened, that happened. Oh my God. All for them to be like, well, that's not happening for me. That's not going on for me. My life is shit. That's not okay. You have to be aware of that. To me, that's my own opinion and my own thought process about that, right? But you still get a chance to feel it, let it go through your body, let it go through your heart. You'll find yourself better apt to handle when someone comes to you with their feelings and their emotions, because if you can acknowledge yours and let them roll through you, you can acknowledge someone else's and let them roll off of you.
Come on now.
I can't see you, but
don't worry. I'm.
Are you doing that?
I did it a few times. I'm not gonna lie to you. All right, John, it's on you. You unmuted yourself, so.
No, I was ready for another question because I started with it's amazing the different ways we're seeing that we can. There's so many different versions of therapy, and that's why I think we're getting to kind of what your definition of mental health is. It's the ability to engage with different emotions and have that conversation with ourselves. Whether that's sitting across from a therapist, whether it's sitting with brothers, sisters, friends, family, whether that's going alone, doing a meditation somewhere. Like all of these are different versions of therapy. And I think it's all getting us closer to getting to know ourselves. But I think deep down is what this is all about.
Okay. So the last question that I have for you guys is, like, we've been talking a lot of me, and personal stuff, which is necessary because, I mean, that's the only real perspective that we have on the world. So good to start there. But what I kind of want to know now is, what do you do for your friends? Like when your friends are in that place. And I know, Jon, you know, we've kind of talked about this, you know, all of you guys, but like, I know a lot of times I have I don't want to say a problem, but it's probably a problem. Cause I don't want to say it. I have a problem reaching out to friends that I know are in pain, not reaching out to them, but I worry as I'm doing it. I always worry that I'm going to cause them more pain by bringing it up. By, you know, if I know somebody has lost a job, like I worry, like, do I bring it up? Do I just call them and talk to them? And that usually ends up being what I do. I just call and shoot the shit. And if they want to bring it up, cool. And if not, I'm just here and I'm just reminding you that, like, hey, I love you and there's some good shit in the world. But like, do you ever, how do you reach out to your friends that are going through issues that you can see that maybe they can't? And how do we as men do that in this situation where maybe you're reaching out to somebody who is not emotionally available in the way that you are and is not interested in talking about it? You know what I mean?
Therapy session. They don't want a therapy session.
Yeah. Who doesn't want to go to therapy and maybe doesn't even want to fucking talk about it?
Right.
So on you, Brandon.
One friend of mine in particular, he was going through a tough time. He had anxiety. And instead of sitting down and having some deep ass talk, we put on basketball. And really, he didn't want, and here's what I found about people in pain. People in pain want to know they're not going through it alone. That's what they want to know. So if you can create an environment that says there's togetherness, I'm with you, that to me has been the most helpful thing with my friends, the people that I love in my life. The people who know that I want to talk, or I'm a talker, they'll call me and say, hey, I want to talk about this. But I never hit anyone up and say, do you want to talk about the thing you're going through? Right. They see that that's how I operate in the world, whether it's podcast interviews, new age gents, whatever the case may be, or they've seen me in a conversation with a stranger, or they've seen me in an environment with someone like Jon or you, Colt. Like they've seen me in an environment where, like, oh, he can get into a conversation. But if that's not the case, I want to create an environment where they don't feel alone and where they feel seen, where they feel valued, and where they feel heard, even if they're not saying anything, right? Because I think sometimes the healing isn't in pulling out the pain and putting it on the table, right? Yeah. Sometimes that's not your job to pull. I want to use, Will and Jada for an example right now. I think the biggest thing Will Smith needs right now isn't for someone to fucking go to him and say, how do you feel about Jada and this whole August thing?
How are we going to get you past this?
How are we going to get you past this? The best thing someone can be for Will Smith right now is a fucking friend. When the whole world is pulling this out to point at it, he needs someone who can, like, take him golfing for 2 hours and not think about it. He needs someone who can sit with him and on the back patio and talk about, you remember when we were 15? And eventually, if Jada comes up or he starts crying, you create the space for that shit to be okay because you know he's going through something. He's just an example of a lot of people that you're doing more harm than good by trying to, like, fix their fucking problem, right? We don't fix people by fixing their problem. We help people by loving on them. That's what we do. This is that particular thing, right? We're not talking about, oh, well, you know, you should call your friends out and you should do this. I got you. If there's a situation they're being harmful, they're being harmful to themselves, being harmful to others, you say, hey, dude, that shit's not okay. That the behavior's not acceptable. But if you see that they've lost a loved one, if you see that they lost their dog, if you see that they're going through a breakup, create the space. An invitation is what they're looking for. An invite, not a forced entry. This space I've created for you is an invitation that if you so choose to talk about this thing that's bothering you, that we both know is fucking evident, then great. But if you don't, I still love you for you, and I'm here for you, not your problem. Again. Again.
You don't have to see it. I'm giving you the snaps. This is a beautiful.
I think one of the, kind of to what Brandon's saying, it's not about fixing anyone's problems, and it's not about trying to be their therapist or their healer or anything like that. I think one of the things that has helped when I see someone going through something, or I know that someone's going through something, and it's been like my go-to question, what's coming up for you? And based on how they answer that question, I can tell if they're going to want to talk about it or not want to talk about it. And like Brandon's example, if they're not wanting to talk about it, one of the best things is still be there for them. Create the space to be like, cool, we're going to hang out. We're going to talk about something else. We're going to do something else. I'm going to still be here, even though I know you're going through something and you don't want to talk about it. Cool. We'll do something else. But I know in that moment, it's good for me to be here for you and just know that you're being supported, even if it's just someone sitting next to you and you're not alone. But if someone wants to engage, it's something I've learned over the years of just going to therapy. It's asking questions. It's not trying to tell them how it is or what it's going to be like or what the solution is or what they should do next. It's just keep asking questions and let them talk. A lot of times, especially for men, what I've come to realize is that it's very hard for men to talk about their feelings openly by choice. And so what I've seen help is that I try to ask the right questions. So what's coming up for you? Oh, well, I'm going through like a lot with my girlfriend. All right, well, what's your side of the situation? What are you feeling? What is coming up for you? And it's like, well, I'm getting angry about this and this. And it's like just asking those questions. And it's like a quote that I gave you guys one of the past sessions where it's like an open mind asks questions, a closed mind makes statements. And so I always try to have them be questions when I'm talking to someone who's going through something, because I don't want to ever come off as telling them what to feel or what to do or anything like that, because usually that's the last thing anyone who's going through something wants to hear. Yeah. And so I try to get coming from a place of questions, but then at the same time, like if they don't want to talk about it, then it's just simply, okay, cool, let's talk about this, let's hang out. And also with as men, one thing I realized is we like to do something with our hands. And so I like Brandon, I was saying, like playing basketball, it's going and doing an activity. Okay, let's go for a hike. And it's like that activity of going and doing something. And I've realized out here, especially in California, a lot of times going for hikes, it gets people to want to talk. And so putting them in even the safe space to want to engage. Sometimes it's hard to just sit and have a couple beers and talk about it, but get on a hike or go for a run or something like that where you're just out in nature, you're doing something, I think gets guys to be a little more open. And again, I think it's creating that safe space. There's no judgment. There's no right or wrong on what you're going to say. There's nothing you even have to say if you don't want to. It's really just being there and letting that person know, hey, whatever you're going through, just know I'm here for you. It doesn't have to be today. If you don't want to talk about it, it doesn't have to be ever. But just know I'm here. You want to hang out, you just need to just get your mind off things. I'm here. And that's usually for a lot of guys is going to be huge, just to know that they have someone there for them.
I think that what you guys have hit on is the best possible thing that people could take away from this episode. How beautiful that what you essentially said was, you know, we've been saying a lot on the channel lately. Love is a verb, right? Love is an action. Love is a flow of energy between two people. Otherwise it's not. It's just love dying if there's no action, right? So as guys, we need to be able to show that love by way of just being there. It seems like what you're both saying, and what I absolutely 100% agree with, is it's not your job to fix it. And Brandon, I love that you said that. It's not your job is not to fix somebody else, because guess what? You fucking can't. Like it's impossible. You cannot fix anybody else. You can only fix yourself, and nobody else can fix you. And that, I think, is such a huge, important thing for us to take away from this. But the effort still has to be there. We have to be willing to just be. And create that safe space doesn't mean something, John, you just said this. What's the thing that we imagine? Like, what if, like, you know, a fucking shitty Hollywood screenwriter is going to write a scene where two guys are talking, you know, and they're talking about real problems. What are they doing? Sitting around having a couple of beers. And I really shouldn't say shitty because I've been in a scene like that, and that is not that came out wrong. But I'm saying, what's the thing that immediately comes to mind? It's just two guys, especially straight guys, they'll just sit around and have some beers and then they'll talk. That's not true. Because what does that do for us? That makes us go, so we're going to talk now? Like, am I supposed to be talking? And then when we're supposed to talk, what do? We don't. We fucking shut the fuck up. We just sit there and we clam up and nobody talks about anything. And I think that both of you came up with great examples, like whether it's basketball or golf or hiking. I love that. And I think creating a space creating a safe space for your friends is not creating actively something. It's literally being there and just letting them know that, hey, I'm around. Like, we can watch golf, we can play golf, we can do whatever, or we could do fucking nothing. And that is, I love that.
If I could add one more thing, and I was actually talking to a friend earlier about this today, the difference between empathy and sympathy.
Okay.
One of the big things.
Sorry.
You're good. One of the big things that I was telling a friend earlier today, empathy is feeling for somebody. Sympathy is feeling bad for somebody. And I know that people may disagree with my definition of sympathy, but I think a lot of times when I've seen people say, oh, I have sympathy for that person, they're almost saying it like, oh, I feel bad for that person. That person's going through a hard time. And it almost kind of excludes them from the situation. Whereas I feel empathy allows you, like if you're sitting with one of your guy friends and you know he's going through a hard time, it's being able to realize, wow, this person's going through a hard time. I'm just going to sit with them. Or I'm just going to spend some time with them because I know if I was in that, this would help me. And this is what I want to share with them. And so coming from a place of empathy for others, especially other men, which I don't think is something that's normally taught to men, like just emotional intelligence. Empathy is something that allows us to share that experience with that person and know that I think that helps us to build on the whole idea that they're not alone.
I mean, shit, y'all. That one more time. You know what? I'm going gallery view. There we go. There we are. God, you guys are handsome.
You're handsome. Sexy ass. I can't see you, but I see myself twice. I don't know why.
What is happening? Hold on a second.
Yeah, I don't know why. I see myself twice. But...
Show active speaker.
Double handsome is what you're saying.
Yes. Double the handsome. I'm not a 10. I'm a 20. Yes.
Yeah. My God, you guys. All right. Well, I don't know why I'm the only one who can see both of you, but I promise you look great. As always, guys, these conversations are fantastic. And I really like the openness and the willingness everybody here has to talk about this stuff, because this stuff seems easy to talk about. And I feel like we all tend to agree on a lot of these things, but the truth is it's not easy to talk about. And to take me back 10 years before, I started doing any of this work, or any of us, I can only imagine back 5-10 years, this is fucking hard. Doing therapy for yourself, which is what at the end of the day we are doing, that is hard, but it's extremely necessary, and it's a fucking huge part of love. And I am very thankful for you guys helping me continually go through therapy without even meaning to once a week during these calls.
That's something we didn't talk about though. And I think it was so important to actually touch on the fact that like, yo, doing these has been therapeutic. I mean, I know for myself, I leave these calls and I'm like, yo, I feel, because we don't only try and give something to the audience, we're also giving something to ourselves and we're giving something to the other guys on the call. So these calls for me, I look forward to them. These have been my therapy sessions. So thank you, Dr. Jon and Dr. Colt, for being my therapist. Thank you. Bill me, invoice me.
Absolutely. My nurse will send the bill. No, I fucking love you guys. This is the best. And you're right. It's something that we didn't really talk about. We didn't touch on that. So thanks for bringing it up.
Yeah.
Well, and I want to also throw in, and building on what you're both saying, is like, that's what I think the whole Refinery started as, was a safe space to talk about the topics that are hard for men to talk about. And it's setting that example that allows not only ourselves to have these conversations, but by other men seeing this, it hopefully creates a ripple effect, allowing them to connect with their other guy friends and be able to have these conversations. Yeah. Because I know these are topics I know a guy's going to see this and think to himself for a little bit, like, how do I deal with my mental health? Because it is a much bigger, broader topic nowadays. And so I think these topics and these conversations really allows guys to kind of see a way of how it's being done and take it for themselves and experience it somewhere else.
Oh yeah. God, it's just so hard to end these calls because we could just keep talking, but Ange made fajitas, so
come on, Ange.
I'm just saying, like,
I love that you give us like a special of the week every time we end the call. It's like last week's theme was, and I'm like,
well, last week was
what the fuck am I
nugget.
doing with my like single ass life? I'm gonna make my own.
I'm just telling you what is happening over here in Prattes, because I'm very, very fortunate, and I want to share that part of it. I get to share, this is a big perk of learning about yourself and emotional intelligence, you guys. So if there's no other reason to learn about your own like self and relationship stuff, the food is spectacular. That said, I think I sent you guys pictures. I sent you pictures of the chicken nuggets, right? Or did I?
No, never got them.
These chicken nuggets.
Yeah, you failed publicly. He's gonna edit this out, by the way, when we get ready to like. When he's
like I'm not. This is great. That said, I might edit this part out. If I edit anything out, everybody subscribe here and check out this video. This video is like the best one. Like I can't even. Wow, that video was amazing. All right, bye everybody. Everybody wave. Bye.
Bye.
Refinery.